Acts 17:32 through 34. It says, when they heard Paul speak about the resurrection of the dead, some laughed in contempt, but others said, we want to hear more about this later. That ended Paul's discussion with them, but some joined him and became believers. Among them were Dionysius, a member of the council, a woman named Damaris, and others with them.
Okay, so we see, what was one of the first responses we encountered there?
Some laughed.
Some laugh, right? So, laughing, mocking, right? We would kind of, this is not red, but we would call that like a red light, right? We'll pretend that's red, okay? So, not everyone is ready for our message, okay? So we don't have to be surprised by that. So, we just recommend we lovingly move on, okay? We're not going to try to argue with somebody, right? They're either open and prepared to receive the message, and if they're not, then that's okay. But we just move on, okay? And I would say this is probably I haven't encountered this much out in just our sharing times, but to me, this but I do experience this in my closer relationships and with people within my oikos and my family, right? That there's just a mocking tone that I know they're not quite ready to hear my message, but I can demonstrate God's love, and I can keep reaching out towards them. They might not reach back, but I can reach towards them. What's the next response that we see?
Some wanted to hear again on the matter.
Right, some wanted to hear more, okay? And we would call this a yellow light, so kind of imagine with me that's yellow. and so maybe they're not ready to receive Christ right then, but maybe they're ready to hear some scripture or maybe share a story of hope. And as we, at the end of the day, we're going to give you a booklet like this that has more of those tools in it, and it'll give you some suggestions, like maybe stories that, one that I use a lot is when the woman approaches Jesus in Simon's house and she weeps over him and anoints his feet with her tears. And that interaction is a great picture of how Christ is receiving of people who are considered sinners, right? And it also gives a big picture of what a religious person can be like. So just even telling a story without, that I have memorized can be very engaging for someone who wants to hear more. And especially as I'm out, just sharing that, having some stories stored up that I can just speak and not have to look it up. Okay? So maybe a story of hope. And then lastly, we saw what? What was our green light response?
Some joined him and believed.
Right, some believed. They were ready, right? So in this situation, what have we already learned today? If they believe, now I have a great opportunity to set their DNA right, tell them about who their identity is. So we want to take them to lesson 1. Celebrate with their new identity, right? Hey, God has entrusted you as an ambassador with people that you already know, who can you be sharing with? We can pray right then for them to begin sharing, right? And then a lot of times while we're out, I'm just going to tell you, in our day and age when people don't always talk, people are happy to give me their cell phone number and have me follow up with them, or happy to set another appointment. Sometimes they don't always show up for the appointment, but if we have an opportunity to follow up with them, we want to, get some connection information to follow up. Okay? And so we would probably follow up here also with this story of hope, if we can come back and read the scripture again. And then lastly, in our community here, I know this probably won't surprise you that you've been told you live in the Bible Belt, right? So you run into a lot of people who say that they already follow Christ, right? An existing believer. Any thoughts on how we could interact with someone who's an existing believer based on what we've learned so far? Right? How is their walk? Encourage them in their walk. And maybe they're not aware. Maybe they're one of the other 6 who have no idea that God's heart is to share who He is with the rest of the world. And so we can take them to lesson 1 and help them enter into the joy of obeying Jesus. So.